Did you have something to do with his death?
No.
We're past that point. This is called damage control. Okay? We know that you were involved. You shot him with the .22.
I didn't.
Yes, you did, right in the top of the head.
I didn't.
Okay, I've talked to killers before. I've talked to straight up people that shot several people. They at least have the balls to own it. And you don't.
She thought she had the perfect plan. A cover story that would fool everyone, the police, the neighbors, even a 911 dispatcher. Deborah Frazier, an Ohio woman living with her boyfriend Tom Waddell, was about to stage one of the most chilling and reckless cover-ups the state had ever seen. In the early hours of a cold winter night, Frazier picked up the phone with shaking hands. She'd just shot herself in the leg. The pain was real. The blood was real. But the story she was about to tell? A complete fabrication.
What's going on? I think someone was in the apartment. It was unlocked, and there's stuff everywhere, and I can't find my boyfriend, and his truck's here. And okay, ma'am. Are you inside the apartment? Are you inside the apartment? I need you to back out of the apartment if you are. Come back out of the apartment if you're in there. Okay. All right. Come on back out of the apartment. Are you in the hallway now?
I'm trying to quietly get there. I don't know if someone's still in here.
Okay. I'm going to stay on the phone with you, but I need you to back out of that apartment right now.
Oh no. I think someone.
Are you out? Did you... All units, I have an active home invasion. 3231 Sandhurst Drive, 3231 Sandhurst Drive.
Oh,
active home invasion.
Oh my God, I'm shot.
Okay. Ma'am, what? He's what?
I've been shot.
Okay, you have or he has?
I have. I haven't even been able to find him yet.
Okay, did you get shot?
Yes.
Okay, all right, ma'am. Who shot you?
Someone in the basket. I don't want to pay right now.
Units, I have shots fired, one person shot.
So the dispatcher tried to calm her, but Frazier's voice was jagged, panicked. She insisted that burglars had broken into the apartment. They'd shot her. They'd murdered her boyfriend. She begged officers to hurry. And on the surface, it sounded believable. A distraught woman, a violent break-in, a bloody scene. But when the first officers arrived, the cracks in her story began to show. Police rushed into the small Ohio apartment. In the back bedroom, they found 32-year-old Tom Waddell lying motionless. He'd been shot multiple times. The scene gruesome, blood soaking through the bedding and walls. In the living room, Deborah clutched her leg, crying out in pain. Officers saw her wound, a gunshot through the flesh of her thigh. She repeated her story through gasps of pain. Two intruders, unknown men, they forced their way in, they killed Tom, they shot her before fleeing. It had all the marks of a classic home invasion. But something didn't add up. The first red flag, the front door, it wasn't broken. There was no forced entry, no splintered wood, no bent locks. The second, nothing was missing. The television, jewelry, wallets, cash, all untouched. This so-called burglary left everything of value behind. Everything except Tom's life. And then came the third, ballistics. The angle of Deborah's leg wound suggested she'd been shot at close range. Too close, almost self-inflicted. Detectives exchanged looks. Something wasn't right here. Deborah Frazier had just given police her version of the night. But within hours, detectives would discover that the burglars she described never existed. The blood on the floor, the gun in her hand, and the words from her own mouth would become the rope that tightened around her neck. And it all started with a single phone call. A call that was supposed to save her, but instead sealed her fate. The moment officers stepped inside Deborah Frazier's apartment, they knew something was off. She was on the floor, crying, clutching her leg wound. The story spilled out of her between sobs. Intruders, masked men, a burglary gone wrong. She swore she barely escaped alive. But the room didn't look like a war zone. There were no overturned drawers, no broken windows, no shattered glass. Just Deborah, bleeding, and Tom Waddell, dead in the back bedroom. The crime scene was strangely quiet. In the bedroom, Tom Waddell lay slumped on the bed, shot multiple times. The sheets were soaked with blood. His death was brutal, deliberate, and yet, there was no chaos in the rest of the apartment. On the coffee table sat a neat stack of bills, a wallet untouched, jewelry boxes still closed, the television an easy grab for any thief untouched. For detectives, this wasn't the scene of a robbery. It was something else entirely. One officer quietly examined the front door, perfectly intact. No forced entry, no splintered frame. Whoever had fired these shots hadn't broken in. They'd been let inside, or they'd already lived there. Another officer looked down at Deborah's leg. The wound was shallow through soft tissue. Painful, yes, but far from life-threatening. And the angle of the bullet suggested something disturbing. She may have shot herself. The idea was unthinkable. But in law enforcement, it wouldn't be the first time. By the end of that first night, officers already had doubts. If two armed burglars had really stormed into the apartment, where was the evidence? Where were the stolen goods? Why would they take nothing except Tom's life? And why, in her hysteria, did Deborah seem rehearsed, repeating the same lines again and again? Detectives had been here before. Real victims of crime they knew spoke in fragments. Their stories shifted under shock. But Deborah's? Her words felt like a script. Forensics confirmed the suspicions. The bullet trajectory in Tom's body suggested the shooter stood close, very close. Too close to have been a stranger firing in chaos. Even stranger, the shell casings. The caliber matched the weapon found inside the apartment. A gun linked directly back to Deborah and Tom. No stolen firearm. No evidence of an outsider. The murder weapon had been right there in the home. Still, detectives couldn't jump to conclusions. They needed to hear Deborah's story again. This time, not from the living room floor, not through the fog of a 911 call, but in the bright, controlled setting of an interrogation room. There, under fluorescent lights, with cameras rolling, detectives would ask the questions she couldn't rehearse for. And in those hours, the cracks in her perfect lie would widen into fractures she could no longer control. Deborah Frazier was no longer the panicked woman clutching her leg in a blood-stained living room. She was now a suspect, sitting across from detectives who'd seen every trick, every excuse, every half-truth. On paper, her story was simple. Masked men broke in, shot Tom, shot her, and vanished into the night. But detectives had questions she hadn't prepared for. Detective, can you describe the men? Height? Clothes? Voices? Deborah, I don't remember. It was dark. They were just there. Her answers were vague. Too vague. Victims usually latch onto something. An accent, a smell, a piece of clothing. Deborah? Nothing. The detectives pressed. How had the intruders gotten inside if the door was intact? Why hadn't they taken anything? And why did the bullets that killed Tom and pierced her leg match the very gun inside their apartment? Deborah squirmed. Her voice cracked. She gave half answers, then circled back to the same line. They came out of nowhere. They shot him. They shot me. But detectives weren't buying it. Then came the trap. Instead of accusing her outright, detectives shifted tactics. They spoke softly. They suggested maybe it hadn't been planned. Maybe she'd snapped in the heat of the moment. Maybe it was self-defense. The words hung in the air. A way out. A lifeline. And Deborah grabbed for it. First, she denied. Then she hesitated. Then she slipped, changing details she'd sworn were true only hours earlier. She said she was in the bedroom when Tom was shot. Moments later, she claimed she'd been in the kitchen. She said the intruders were masked. Later, she said she couldn't remember if they were. Each contradiction piled higher. Each stumble chipped away at her credibility. Hours into the questioning, Deborah Fraser was cornered. Her lies were unraveling, each contradiction exposed, each excuse dissected, and the detectives weren't letting her go. When they suggested self-defense, her eyes flickered. For the first time, she seemed to consider admitting something. But when she opened her mouth, the truth spilled out in fragments. A messy, fractured story of rage, betrayal, and a desperate attempt to cover her tracks. At last, she broke. Quietly, almost under her breath, she admitted the unthinkable. It wasn't burglars. It was me. Detectives leaned in. They had to make sure. She repeated it, this time louder. She shot Tom Waddell. The so-called intruders never existed. The injury to her leg? Self-inflicted, a stage detail meant to sell her story. What followed was a chilling description of the night Tom died. Fraser admitted she and Tom had argued. Their relationship had fractured under jealousy, resentment, and accusations. What began as a shouting match turned violent. She grabbed the gun. She fired. Whether it was calculated or a moment of blind rage, only Deborah knows. But Tom Waddell paid the ultimate price. And afterward, in a panic, she concocted a lie. She staged the burglary. She shot herself in the leg, believing it would convince investigators she'd been a victim, not a killer. But instead of saving her, that gunshot doomed her. When her case went to trial, the confession was damning. Prosecutors laid it out step by step. The broken relationship, the staged wound, the fabricated 911 call. Jurors heard her own words, admitting to pulling the trigger. The defense tried to paint her as unstable, overwhelmed, caught in a tragic accident. But the evidence told another story, cold, deliberate choices to cover her tracks. Witnesses testified to the couple's strained relationship. Forensics tied every bullet back to the household gun. And Deborah's self-inflicted wound became the prosecution's centerpiece. Proof of her elaborate, deceitful cover-up. It didn't take the jury long. Deborah Fraser was found guilty of murdering Tom Waddell. The sentence, decades behind bars. Her hopes of escaping justice with a fabricated story had collapsed entirely. For the community, the case left a scar. A man's life taken, family shattered, and a shocking reminder of how far some will go to escape responsibility. Deborah Fraser's story became a cautionary tale, not of masked burglars or home invasions, but of lies layered on lies until the truth can no longer be hidden. Because in the end, her gunshot wound, her frantic 911 call, her desperate tears, none of it could outlast the evidence. None of it could silence the truth. Deborah Fraser thought she could fool everyone. Instead, she fooled no one.